Hey there, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. So if you're watching this video right now, it can only mean one thing. It means that you're preparing to take the SATs, perhaps pretty soon. And of course, you are in dire need of fire strategies to help you gain brilliant scores on the verbal section of the SATs, and of course that is my specialty. For starters, I am Chigozie Nwokoji, a certified verbal tutor with over 5 years in the field, and have an impressive track record of more than 2,000 students who have gone through my lessons and emerged with scores around 700, 750. I have even had a student score as high as 780, and ultimately these students gained scholarships into the universities of their choice in the UK, in Canada, or in the United States of America. And you can best believe that I am here to help you just as much as I helped those students. So if you find that you struggle to understand the reading comprehension passages, or you find that you struggle with the options, probably where you're grappling with too tight options, or you find that you can hardly manage your time on the verbal section of the test, this video is precisely for you. In fact, this YouTube page is specifically designed to help you emerge the champion that you are. Now, if you've been struggling so far around scores of 500-ish, at the very most 600, it probably doesn't mean that you do not know how to read or that you're dumb. It means just one thing. It means that you have probably been applying the wrong strategies. You probably carried over the strategies from your secondary school into the SATs reading comprehension, not knowing that the SATs work with tricks and strategies, and those are precisely what I'm blessing your eardrums with today. So you want to stay logged on here for the full load of useful content I'm going to be blessing you with. Now, to delve right into the content of today's video, today I am going to be taking you through what I consider my 5 incredible tips to help you scale through the verbal section. Now, there's something you must know for statistics, and from experience, I have discovered that students who have relatively good reading comprehension skills before they started lessons with me, I mean students who read novels on a or students who read anything at all and they enjoy reading, right? But they still struggle to climb beyond 600. What my teaching experience has taught me is that once they know how to work with these 5 tips, they can do well on their own even within the first month of class. Yes, and for subsequent classes, they more or less wouldn't even need my lessons anymore. So this can just be you. You've probably been applying the wrong strategies, and you just need to stay here for the 5 incredible tips that could help you climb from a 600 to a 700. You just can never tell. Now, down to the tips. Now down to my 5 incredible tips to help you scale through the verbal section of the SATs. Number 1, practice time management. I know this sounds pretty obvious. Come on, you've heard it from so many YouTubers and probably from your tutor too, but this is one twist to it that you must know, right? To begin with, the SAT verbal section is divided between 2 segments. There is the standard English convention part. If you've been taking practice before now, I'm sure you're familiar with the question, which choice best complete the text so that it conforms to standard English conventions. Does that sound familiar? Yes, the questions simply require your knowledge of some important grammar nuggets, and I mean your knowledge of punctuation marks, your knowledge of pronoun placement, your knowledge of modifiers, your knowledge of tenses, verb agreement, right? Those are basic grammar nuggets that you probably have carried over from your secondary school, which still works just as well on the SAT. Now, those questions do not take so much time to deal with. But on the other hand, you have questions that test your reading comprehension skills. In other words, this question requires you to read to a considerable level the content of the text before you can comfortably answer the questions on it. And I'm talking about the main idea, the inference question, the command of evidence, and the specific detail and the likes. Now, you will find that the standard English convention questions are a lot easier to deal with. In fact, on so many of those questions, you do not need to read all of the text to get your best answer. You probably just have to focus on the sentence around the blank. Hence, you could spend as low as 10 to 20 seconds dealing with each of those questions in that segment. Now, you must start with these questions, regardless of the fact that on the full test, you have the reading-based questions occurring first. It is not compulsory that you start with those questions. In fact, it is a digital test, so you can maneuver your way around it to starting from the bottom. Once you are able to do this, you can save up a lot of time to work on the more technical reading based questions. So practice this and see how it works for you. Secondly, do not read through the text the first time too fast, especially on main idea and inference question. In fact, you don't need precisely the same reading approach for all of the reading comprehension questions. I will take that again. You don't need the same reading approach for all of the reading comprehension questions. While some require you to read a large chunk of the text, in fact, everything on the text, others require you to focus on a particular sentence or two. Right now, on the main idea and inference question, you have to gain some reading grasp. You have to gain some knowledge of what the text is talking about overall. Hence, you don't want to read through the text the first time very fast. I know this sounds a lot self-contradicting. Come on, this is supposed to be a time-based test, so how can you tell us to not read fast? Chill, right? Now, this is the danger of reading too fast the first time. You get to waste a lot of time, even without knowing it. This is a time-based test, right? Hence, you're required to spend at least a minute and 90 seconds on each question. However, if you apply the previous tip well enough, you may have more than a minute and 90 seconds to spend on the reading comprehension question. But then that is by the way. If you read the text the first time and you read too fast, there is a likelihood that you won't understand it the first time. Hence, you probably need to read the second time, the third time, and in fact, when dealing with the options, you would have to read the text for every single option that you consider tricky. Now, look at it this way. You've probably ended up spending a lot more time than you would have spent if you take some time to carefully read the first sentence well enough. And this is very important because the first sentence tends to hold the key to what the subsequent parts of the text is all about. So once you have gained a grasp of the first sentence, and of course the blob, on a more comprehensive class you understand what the blob means, right? But I mean that little portion on each text that do not contain the main information you're looking for, but that portion is even important. So if you have gained a considerable grasp, and I mean if you have understood what the first sentence means, right, you probably do not have to waste a lot of time on the other portions of the text. So you do not read the text the first time very fast, especially when dealing with main idea or inference questions. Now, tip number 2. You want to ensure to make the most of transitional words and punctuation marks. Now, a lot of students do not know how effective transitional words and punctuation marks go to present a good writing. Every good author, every good book at all you read makes very good use of transitional words and punctuation marks, including the excerpts you're reading on the SAT. I will have you know that the text you have on the SAT questions are excerpts. In other words, they are little portions drawn from bigger text where authors have explored a lot of semantics, a lot of word choices to drive home their various meanings. Now, by transitional words, an idea can either drift or continue. Now, what does this mean? It means that if I have a word like, for example, after the first sentence, it simply means that subsequent sentences will go to buttress that first sentence. Now, because I know the function of, for example, as a transitional word, I may not need to spend a lot of time reading the detail after the for example, because I have fully understood what the first sentence says, and because I know again what transitional words, what for example is meant to do. However, I just used the other category. I mean the detour transition signs, right? These words would let you know that there was a drift coming through. In other words, the information you have after words like however, but, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the contrary, differently, and the likes. In a more comprehensive class, again, you get to know all of the specific detour words, right? Once the information you have after them are more or less contradicting information, or you can say new information, right? So they let you know that what is coming through, what is coming after them, isn't necessarily meant to buttress the previous idea, but meant to give you something new, whose information you need to get the best answer. It works just the same way for your punctuation marks. All the punctuation marks, in fact, I consider straight ahead signs. Your full stop, your semicolon, your colon, they all serve to illustrate or explain the previous sentence. So say if you grasp the idea of the previous sentence and you find semicolons and colons after that first sentence, it simply means the subsequent information isn't so different. Number 3, always have a prediction. Again, you want to complain that this is a time-based test, we don't have so much time to make a prediction. But making a prediction is something you do on a subconscious level if you have read the text well the first time. Remember, if you notice so far, I've been stressing on the reading comprehension question because, of course, that is the trickier to pass of the 2 segments on the verbal section, right? Now, if you read well the first time, you're bound to leave the text with an idea of what your answer should look like before moving on to the answer choices. Now, once you do this, the likelihood is that once you come across the best answer, you will know. And this brings us to our 4th strategy, which is that you want to focus a lot more on eliminating answers than focus a lot more on getting correct answers. This sounds paradoxical, I am sure. Oh, we are looking for good answers, so why tell us to go and look for wrong answers? If you structure your mind to look for wrong answers, you would always get wrong answers, and the right answer will be the most difficult to eliminate because you find that there is almost nothing wrong in it. But if you structure your mind to look for right answer, trust me, the SAT is prepared to deal with you. The SAT is prepared to structure answers that are wrong to look correct. So if you prepare your mind to look for just that one correct answer, you are bound to fall into the loop. So look for wrong answers. Haven't had the idea of what the text is talking about, what your answer should look like, look for answer that says something wrong. Which brings us to our final strategy, our 5th incredible strategy, and probably the most incredible strategy. Your correct answer rephrases information in the text. All of the reading comprehension questions, it applies to all of the reading comprehension sections, no exceptions, right? The best answer must not mention a word, a phrase, even an article that you cannot find in a rephrased form in the passage. In other words, if you cannot see any word or any phrase, if you can see a word or phrase in the answer that is not perfectly rephrased or demonstrated in the passage, that answer is wrong. Make it a point of duty to eliminate answers than to look for correct answers, because when you structure your mind to look for correct answers, every answer would look correct. Hence, you would end up falling into the trap of choosing the wrong answer, which is why the SAT is designed to be a difficult test on the verbal section, right? Come on, they don't want you to pass. So these tips, and of course, see them work miracles for you in skyrocketing your scores from a 500 to a 600, from a 600 to a 700 and above. Thank you.